Hello everybody, welcome back to the Norries podcast. Before we get into it there, we just want to remind people that we're supported through Danny Donovan at quickminutes.com.
Yeah, Danny's a very good friend of both myself and James. He comes from the north side as well, and he grew up locally, and he's been a massive supporter of the podcast and both myself and James since we actually began. And he has his own company called Quick Minutes now, and
quickminutes.com is a meeting management application for semi-formal and formal meetings. And look, if you want to know more about that, quickminutes.com, and supporting Danny's supporting us. So if you're interested in that, check them out and enjoy the rest of the podcast. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Norries podcast. I'm your host James, and I'm joined as always by my good friend Timmy Long.
Hi everyone.
Sean is on the light and sound. How are you, Sean?
Not too bad, how are you getting on?
Good boy, good. We have the Minister for Public Expenditure, Minister Micheal McGrath, in the studio today. How are you, Michael?
I'm very good. Thanks, James and Timmy, for having me, and delighted to be here.
Yeah. We're 4 weeks away from Christmas. How's your home budget going? I said you're used to doing budget on a big level, but there's people at home now and they're budgeting and they're divvying out. You have a few kids, Tim?
I have 2 kids and 2 dogs. These days the dogs are more expensive than the kids, because every week my wife seems to be down in the pet shop buying some sort of treat or jumper for one of the dogs. So
Did she buy you that jumper too, Tim?
I'm after putting it into about 40 hot washes now.
Timmy boil washes his clothes, so there'll be a title on him.
Yeah, he's well built anyway, so I wouldn't like to be feeding you, Timmy. But no, we've no dogs, but we've a few cats and lots of kids, as you know.
Yeah. But we go way back for the people that don't know you. Or maybe most people would know you as like a minister or as a TD, but they won't really know you. So, do you want to tell us a little about where you're actually from, where you grew up?
I'm from Passage West. That's what I regard as home, really. That's where I grew up. My parents, fantastic parents. I was one of 5 siblings. My dad was originally from small farm in West Cork. Did lots of different jobs through his life, mainly construction as a labourer. Worked in London as with many other Irish people down the years. Came back, was a driver for Casey's Furniture in Cork, and then he worked in
Famous
insulation.
Fans.
Yeah, Famous Fans. He went up and down the road to Dublin when it was a very different road. And then he worked in insulation with Cape Insulation, they were called. Did some work on the Pfizer site, but a hard-working labourer in effect. And my mum was always a home carer.
Where was your mum from?
Mum was from Toker. Lehenamore, Toker, and
The posh part of Walker.
Well, both sides of our family would be very old Toker.
Yeah.
Very old Toker.
But I think if you're looking at Toker now, and I know a lot of people from Toker, but you've Dean Rock and kind of over towards between Dean Rock and Glasheen would be very kind of local authority. But then I was out in, Spike O'Sullivan, the boxer.
Yeah.
He've a gaff out in, he've a house out in Lenamore, but it's lovely out there then. The really nice houses up the hill, So if you're saying he's posh now, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, like in those
Don't
days,
say it to him,
our home place was very, rural at the time, up the steep hill, basically.
Yeah, that's where the water charges began, didn't it, the protest in Lenamore?
Yeah, they were pretty hot there. So I grew up in Passage. We lived in a council estate, Ardmore Estate, for a number of years. That was, so my parents moved out from the city, Greenmount Buildings, top of Barrack Street. That's where I was actually born. And they moved down to Passage and got a council house, their first real security, I suppose, as a couple.
Buildings. Is that near Noonan's Road? Is in and around that area?
So it's just across from the Greenmount National School, really.
very
So
working
it's
class
top of
family.
Barrack
So
Oh, very much so. Yeah, my mum never. Well, when she was young, she worked, but when, as with those days, when she got married and kids started coming, that was the end of work. And my dad got.
Had you a big family?
I was one of 5.
Okay.
I was one of 5, second youngest. But my dad got quite sick when he was quite young, but about 1984, he got very, very sick with kidney failure. Almost killed him. I was only about 7 or 8 at the time. But thankfully he recovered and couldn't work again though. So the only income we had was invalidity pension. Mum didn't work, so it was
difficult.
Fight.
This sounds very difficult.
But the council said a good scheme at the time that if you gave up your council house, you got a grant of £5,000. And coming from a small farm in West Cork, he always had a bit of a yearning for the countryside. And so they took that grant, managed to get a small loan and bought a little cottage on about a third of an acre between Passage West and Monkstown, Laurel Hill, Rathankar area. People might know it as kind of near the back road, say, between Rochester Monastery and Monkstown. So that's where the rest of my upbringing was. My dad could never work again, and so we got 10 very good years with him. He died in 1995. I was 18, but for those 10 years, I spent an awful lot of time with him, going up and down to the golf course in Monkstown, looking for golf balls. He'd wash them, sell them. That was my part-time job, and then caddying, carrying golf bags. It was a great upbringing.
He left a big impression on you.
He did. Yeah, he was a lovely man. He was quiet in his own way, but very, very strong, physically strong, and a strong personality, and the kind of person you'd look up to. My mum was great too. She's still with us, hale and hearty. Thank God, lives in Passage. But of course, you'll always have a special memory of a parent that you've lost.
Yeah. Where did you go to school?
Went to school in Passage, started in the convent in the centre of the town, and then up to what was Sculculum Boys from second class on, and then we went to St. Peter's Community School. It was a brand new school. It was an amalgamation of the old tech in Passage and the secondary school, and it opened its doors in '88. We were the very first years in the door. So went to school there. Yeah.
And when you when you were in school, had you always an interest in politics or debating, or how did the flair for what you do now, was it matter? Were you always kind of drawn to it, or did you fall into it? It
kind of grew on me slowly, I would say. Like, I was really, really shy in school. I'd still be shy as a person, but you kind of learn to manage it, and you get experience of public speaking and so on. But when I was in school, I don't think anyone would have predicted that I would be the one who would go to public life and be able to speak and go into politics. But look, I did have an interest in history, so I suppose in secondary school that really developed. My parents weren't political, never involved in politics. They would generally have voted for people they knew, and would generally have voted for Fianna Fáil, but they weren't involved, weren't members or anything. But I suppose the news would be on, the newspapers would be there, Dad would drop us to school, Morning Ireland would be on, and I liked history in school, and it just began to grow on me, I think, through secondary school, and then I went to college.
Did you enjoy school? Were you academic? Was it something you
Yeah,
really
I did enjoy school. Yeah, good memories of school. I think when I was in primary school, it was the kind of getting the slaps was coming to an end. I got a few, but it was coming to an end. I tell our own kids about it now, and they find it incredible that you'd have to put out your hand.
That's why my right here is a little bit too far to the right there. Or, but listen,
that's your story.
You grabbed.
We believe you. I did enjoy school. Definitely. I was quiet, but would have played sport, did all the normal things, and made very good friends. And school was good to me. It was very good to me. I was the first in my own family then to go on to college, and I worked hard there because I was determined. I knew I had an opportunity that my parents never had, and I'm very conscious of that, and I wanted to make the most of it.
That's great awareness.
Absolutely.
Was sport part of your life as well at that?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I played soccer and GA all the way up Passage would have a very strong sporting tradition. Good clubs and great people. I did enjoy sport all the way up, and would to this day be very interested and involved through my own kids now rather than myself. But I always love sport, and it's a great release. I find it a great switch off at the weekend. I just come home and go to all their matches.
You mentioned something there that I could relate with, and Timmy as well, I'd say, about not being the most outgoing person or being a little bit shy, but with practice, public speaking is just something that you'll get better at and more confident with. But I think that for me anyway, I was never the most outgoing person. I would be a little bit insecure, a little bit shy and stuff like that. But I think the more public speaking we do, the more comfortable you get at it, and the more there's nothing to be afraid of, because a lot of the shyness is about fear of what if somebody laughs, what if somebody but I think for people that's at home listening, and you're shy and you think that you can't go into public office or you can't go into public life or set up your own podcast, or you actually can, and it's just a skill that you develop the same as anything else, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's about being yourself, and just being comfortable, and everyone is different. You don't have to get up and speak like the next person. There will always be better public speakers. There'll be people who are exceptionally good at it. But you just be yourself, and people aren't there to judge you generally. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, then you'll be fine. And look, there are a lot more kind of serious things going on in life. You know, we all know of so many people that we've lost. You know, so you just have to have, I think, a bit of perspective about it. And like anxiety and stress is a big issue for a lot of people now. So I think the more that we can just reassure people about being themselves, just keep going, put one foot in front of the other, just be resilient and keep turning up. I think that's important, and you know, and not be worried about what other people think.
And calling it what it is as well. I think that's a big one for me, is if I'm ever doing a talk for anybody, just before I do start, the minute you call whatever you're feeling out there, it just takes the whole, it just cuts it in half. So if I'm doing a talk or anything, I just say, I'm a little bit nervous here now, so bear with me.
Or even in a job interview,
I'm
just feeling a little bit of tension, feel a lot of tension or feel a lot of nerves, before you start. And it just, once you voice it, I think it helps you settle. You know, maybe not if you're just in the UN or something, maybe you won't do that, like, but you find different ways as you want, you know what I mean? That's just one way of doing it.
But we're very lucky as well, Michael, because a lot of our stuff, like you'd have a lot of stuff now that you have to talk about, and it's structured. Our stuff is more or less, it's our story and how we're relating to other people when we're talking to them. So, like, when there's structure for me, it's like, it's tougher.
But let's say now, you had to give a presentation on carpentry. Do you talk all day and all night about that?
Geez, you'd have to drag me off the stage.
But you're never going to go up public speaking, talking about something you haven't got a clue about. Do you know what I mean? You're always going to be prepared. Like, preparation is the key to all of this stuff as well. What did you do in college? Did you go to UCC?
I did, I did commerce, business for 4 years.
And what did you do afterwards?
So I joined KPMG in Cork, so their office on the South Mall, to do chartered accountancy. So I was lucky that, you know, I did well enough in college that I did have choices, but I wanted to stay in Cork, and like, that was a big deal for us, a big deal for my family, you know, to have someone putting on a shirt and tie every day and going out to work into an office environment, which I think was, look, a sign of progress, a sign of change in many ways, and again, just the opportunity that wasn't there for the people that came before me, and I was determined to do the best that I could for them as much as for myself.
Did you have like imposter syndrome starting out, kind of bucking the trend of kind of blue collar work, going into that office environment? You don't really have anybody in your family to kind of like give you, you're stepping out of that for the first time. So did you feel comfortable in it? Were you confident, or did you feel like a little bit exposed? Or
I think you'd always be nervous. Like, it was my first real job as such, and it was a professional environment, and you know, you have to learn a lot because you're doing something for the first time. But no, in fairness, they were very welcoming and very open, and you know, you'd be a bit apprehensive, but you just keep turning up and keep getting on with it.
And it's about facing the fear. It's a big deal. Like, a lot of people, the reason that they don't go further in their lives or their jobs or whatever is because when an opportunity comes up and the fear comes in and they feel fear, it stops them from bypassing that little area that they can never pass. But if you feel the fear and go past it and keep doing that, and every time fear comes into you, because we all have fear because we think we're not good enough, or that we can't do it, you know. When you go over that and you cross over that line and you know you can do it, it's like me when we started this, I was terrified and I could barely talk. No, it comes natural to me because I'm so used to it. Sometimes I do get confused with my words because at times my vocabulary can catch me, but it's about facing the fear and just stepping over it and just saying, I'm going to try it and see what happens.
But I think what people love about your podcast is just that it's natural, like, it's not rehearsed, you know. You're not reading lines, the two of you are sitting there, you've nothing in front of you, and you're just letting it flow. And, you know, in life, we don't get much opportunity for that nowadays. You know, just take away the noise and just talk. And it's lovely to be able to do it.
And it's great to get to know people as well properly. Like, you know, so a lot of our guests, they come in here and we mightn't have met them before, and we just make it so simple and easy for everybody sitting at the table, because we're not out here to get any nitty or gritty, nothing. We're here just to have a chat, who are you? Where did you come from? What are you about now? And what are you doing? Because it's inspiring. You're going to inspire the next generation of the leaders of the country. Do you know if they're listening here around politics because of your background?
Yeah.
And it shows that anybody can be a politician, minister.
Or even like, you know, by creating a bit of transparency here now and the role maybe in a minute, like just to get people that maybe don't vote, might you know, the next time they get the opportunity, they might vote, you know, because it's important to vote no matter who you vote for.
Absolutely, yeah.
How did you get involved in politics? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I was lucky where I lived in Passage West and Monkstown. There was a town council, so it was like the first step on the ladder as such. They're all abolished now, unfortunately, but I ran for election there when I was in KPMG training. I was 22. My first election, I did have an election in college, Commerce and Economic Society, and that was probably when I really, I suppose, felt that, you know, I could do this.
Were you a member of Unifile at this stage?
In college, I was a member, but not active. I wasn't really active because, to be honest with you, I did kind of focus on my work, and I think I had a lot to prove. I felt that I was motivated to do well, and I concentrated on that. But I did join Fianna Fáil in college, and then became more involved immediately afterwards, and joined the local Cumann. I remember going out to the clinic of Micheal Martin in Carrigaline one day, and I was, I'd say, 19 or 20, and I was asking him, how do you become involved in the party? And I told him I'd love to be involved and maybe run someday. And to be fair to him, he was very welcoming, and he explained to me that there were a family just down the road from me who were in the local Cumann, and that I should go and talk to them, and they might bring me in and take it from there. And I did that and joined the local Cumann, then ran for the first election, got 474 votes, and probably a lot more than I needed. The great thing about that level is like 150, 200 votes will get you elected, and the council had no real power, but fantastic learning experience just to get to all the officials would come in and answer questions about your area, and you learn from your colleagues as well who had a lot more experience than me. So that was a great grounding.
How did you find going canvassing for the first time?
I found that as a young candidate there was a great welcome. You know, I think people do like someone new and fresh and kind of different, and I would have been involved locally in, you know, clubs and that kind of thing, so I would have known a lot of people. But definitely I think being a first time candidate, there was a welcome. And I suppose growing up, as I kind of went through my teenage years and I was going through college, I just did have that sense that I wanted to do something different. I think there is great value in being involved in your area, first of all, your community, and then getting their trust and their support, being elected to represent them and to have an influence over things that affect people in their day-to-day lives. That for me was the motivation and remains the motivation. Today I could have gone on to do, you know, different things, but I'm delighted with the path I chose, and thankfully it worked out.
It must be a big honour to have, you know, people, your constituents or your peers, to get up off their arse and go out and actually vote for you and endorse.
It's massive,
you know, it's a big thing, I'd say.
It's massive. It's really humbling, you know, that they go out of their way to go in and vote. And like we take democracy for granted, but, you know, we look around the world and we really shouldn't take it for granted and give out about the people elected. That's fine. That's that's our right. It's the people's right, and they can replace them. But sure, isn't it great that they can go in and replace them with somebody else that they choose, and they'll give out about them then, and they'll probably replace them the time after that. But look, that's a great system. Instead of you know,
but politics is one of these areas. It's such a grey area because, particularly in your position, you're right at the moment. You're Minister for Finance,
Public
Expenditure. Yeah. So, like, you have to make sure that money goes here, and you might be taking money from a different area to put it here, like, and then the people who are getting the money where all the time, and it's been taken, a little bit has been taken to be for the money to go somewhere where it really needs it as well. It can be such a kind of difficult process because you're getting shit off these people because you're taking some money here to it's like how do you deal with that?
Like, we've been lucky, I suppose, in the last couple of years that we've been trying to spend money to support the economy and support people during COVID, just people who lost their jobs because of public health restrictions, trying to look after them as best we could with, you know, PUP and different payments, and then helping businesses as well through all the various schemes that are there. But like, I've been in politics as well at times when there were serious cuts, and like, that was pretty brutal. I was, you know, a backbench TD, was elected in 2007, and within really a year or more, the whole thing had gone bust. Like, the financial crisis, property collapsed, and
I say it's difficult canvassing at that stage then.
Yeah, it was brutal. Yeah. My second general election was incredibly tough. Yeah, you'd be going to a door, people you'd know well, and you'd be really, God, I know him or her, no, that's great. And then they'd just say, no, not this time, Michael. No, too much has happened. Can't vote you back in.
Yeah.
And that's hard. You know people well, but look, they were hurting. They were hurting.
You must have seen a lot of pain in people's faces, because a lot of people, like, they lost their businesses. Some people lost their homes.
Yeah.
You know, like, and
Absolutely,
you're looking at that. How did you feel when all this was going on? It can be tough for any human being.
Very, very tough. Yeah, that was the hardest election I've ever experienced, and you just have to understand where people are coming from. You know, they're not being cross with you for the sake of it. It's because they are hurting. They might not be able to provide for their family in the way that they want to, or they might be falling behind on a mortgage, or struggling on a housing list, and you just have to try to put yourself in their shoes and always try and see the world from the person that you're talking to.
And you know, sometimes your intentions, and I can see that, I can see it, I can see what kind of person you are. You look like a good man, family man, and you really want to help people. You know, and when you're out canvassing and you're telling people, I am going to work my absolute best on this, I am going to try everything in my power to get it.
Yeah.
But sometimes maybe you can't get something over the line. And then you have to face these people again. How does that feel, Mike?
Well, I mean, you learn, you know, I suppose you learn to manage expectations. You know, sometimes politicians overpromise, and that's what gives us a bad name, is we overpromise, and then we come back a few years later and haven't delivered what was promised. So I think being honest with people and being straight with them works. People respect that, and the message you have mightn't be what they want to hear, that I can't promise you a house, or I can't promise that I'll resolve this issue or that issue, but I promise I will work and do my very, very best for you, and we'll stay in touch and we'll try and work our way through it. So that's the approach I take. But look, there's no getting away from like, elections are really, really tough on the candidate and the people around you, and there's no hiding place. If you're on that ballot paper, there is no hiding place. Everybody will know how you did in the end. And you know, it's a fantastic thing when you're elected. And thankfully I haven't lost a general election. Could happen someday, and you just have to deal with that then. But certainly during those years, you know, when cuts were being imposed on people's welfare, on the pay of public servants, when just investment generally by government was being reduced to get the country kind of back on track and get the budget back into a better position. But I suppose that has shaped my own views now, that while we are in better times and we're in good shape as a country financially, we just have to be careful, because I know the devastation that can be caused if you go too far. Like in politics, the easiest thing would be to do everything for everyone and tell them, oh yeah, I'll do that, no problem, and we'll spend this money here and that money there, and we do that over there. It's the road to ruination, and it's the road to the next round of cuts. Because like, at the end of the day, a government that loses confidence internationally is going to get into real difficulty, and that works its way down then to hurt ordinary people in communities all over the country. So when we say no to certain things, it's because we believe that's the right thing to do, because to try and satisfy everyone and promise everything to everyone, it's the road to disaster for Ireland. That's just my view.
It's do you know, around that recession 2011, there would be a lot of people no access to this podcast from Canada and Australia that would have emigrated off the back of that. You know, now they're set up outside across the water, and they have their mortgages and their kids or whatever. So that was because of a recession. But at the moment, there's a lot of people leaving the country as well, and we actually have a very good economy at the moment. You know, we have full employment and almost full employment. You know, and things are good. But you know, obviously, housing is the big issue. Like, do you think that you're a finance man, you're an accountant, you're in the office you're in? Do you think that there's a disconnect in Ireland between Ireland as a society and Ireland as an economy, and what good is a good economy if people can afford, do you know what I mean? If
Yeah.
if your salary is on
Yeah.
the increase, if we've less people on the live register, but there's still there's no kind of, still not balanced, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like the whole value in having a good economy is to try and create a good and decent society
Yeah.
with good services. Like that's the kind of politics I believe in.
Yeah.
It's not capitalism for the sake of it, but the resources that are generated through taxes and so on should be used then to invest in housing and healthcare, in facilities in local communities and so on. And look, housing is the biggest issue we face. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
Like we've got to deliver far more homes of all kinds in Ireland. It is a tragedy to see people homeless, to see people on a housing list for 10, 12, 14 years. It's built up over a long time, and we have to get to grips with it. And it is of course an economic issue, but it's first and foremost a social issue. And like I do believe in social justice because of where I come from. I understand the value of opportunity, and we have a great country in Ireland. We really do, and we are doing well overall. We're only 100 years old. Ireland's only 100 years old. We're now living about 25 years longer than people were 100 years ago. And you look at health outcomes and education and employment opportunities, like it has transformed. But we have major problems, particularly in housing, and I would be the first to acknowledge that, and we have to do more and we have to do better.
Do you know, like, all of us here in the studio probably grew up in social housing. Without the corporation, where would we be? We've said this before on the podcast, but like we used to have a lot of corporation houses before, corporations building houses. Would you like to see a return to that, or maybe like have private investment is important? Like, we're not looking like a Marxist state or anything like that. Have private investors to come in, or private landlords, whatever, but also have a kind of a social side of it, you know what I mean? A social democratic side where the government would be building houses alongside private, you know?
Yeah, and like that is happening now, but I'll be the first to admit that for a period of time it didn't happen. The state kind of stepped back from directly building homes, and I suppose because of my own background, like I do recognise the value, because I know the security it gave to my family that they otherwise wouldn't have had. They were renting, you know, like many people would be now, and they did get the opportunity of becoming tenants in a council estate and moved on from there. And some people want to move on, some people buy out that home, and others just stay there as tenants for the rest of their lives. But it gives them that anchor, it gives them that security of having a home. So we are now, and I know you don't want to go into the politics and policies of it, but I would argue that we are now getting back to that, building more public homes in a serious way, like we did that as a country when we were much poorer. And so through the approved housing bodies and the local authorities now, they basically bring in builders, contractors. They don't employ them directly. They contract in those services now.
But do you think
we just need a lot more of it?
It's because we're a good bit behind, because the state stood back, as you said, for a period of time. So we're playing catch up.
Yes, we are.
I think the solution to that at the moment may be in the modular housing. You know, start, because they're so quick. They're put up so quick, but we still have complications around planning, and that's a big complication because of the planning laws in this country. It takes so long for it to get over the line. Can government not come to a decision around certain areas in Ireland where housing is needed? Look at areas where we could put modular housing in and say, right, we have to bypass the planning here in this area. I know you've on board Panola now and all these other organisations who might get in the way. But in order for us to solve some of the housing issues we have, these are ways that we can solve them. Is start bringing in some of these international companies to do the modular housing. They have certain housing, you know, there's booklets where you can get them built. We'll do the foundation. It's just my opinion that we could solve a lot of these issues if we just make it easier with the paperwork side of it as well, with the planning and stuff. Yeah,
look, I would acknowledge like there was resistance within the system to modular build or rapid build, to doing it in a significant way, but we've made that decision now. We are going to fast track planning, and we're going to give a lot of powers to the minister. There will be opposition, there will be resistance, you know, that is the reality we have to face. But we're doing it we started by doing it for Ukrainians. And you have the scheme in Mahon, for example, that's underway. But we are now going to do it as well for people on the social housing list. They're really top quality homes. They have a tenure of 60 to 80 years, and they're a lot better than being in a hotel or being on the street. And they are, they're really good quality.
Well
so
insulated,
we are going to do that, because the traditional build and site selection and procurement and planning and all of that, it is slow, and we have a crisis. We just have to deal with it.
But talking about that, wherever we do put these houses as well, say if they're put into an area, we have to make sure that we have an area for a GP, a shop, maybe a community centre, all these different things. So
I think when I could be wrong now, but I think when if there's local authority houses, I think for every 45 units there has to be a certain amount of services put into the area as well. Okay. I think that's how it works as well.
Yeah. Look, that is the ideal, but I think we just have to get on with building them in the best place we possibly can. But like, some of those services are under strain as well. People find it difficult to get a GP now if they move into an area, and so on. So it may not be perfect, but like, when you have 11,000 plus people homeless, and we have inward migration now, at a major scale, not just Ukrainians, but people coming from a whole host of non-EU countries. Ireland is an attractive place, but it puts added pressure on a system that's already under strain. And just putting people into hotels long term is not a solution.
Do you know, the system's under strain. I'm taking it that it's probably because of COVID now and everything. Has the government kind of reached a place where they're set again to a way that they were before COVID? That there's not very much stress financially on the government anymore over.
Well, yeah, like the recovery in the economy was better than anyone really expected, and that's been a great help. We've a lot more people working in Ireland right now than we ever had at any time in our history. And like, if COVID had been handled badly, a lot of businesses would have gone to the wall and never recovered. But thankfully, the overwhelming majority of them survived, with support, and they appreciate that support. They did survive, and now they're facing different challenges with energy costs and other costs at the moment. But yeah, look, the public finances have dramatically improved. We're getting a huge amount of corporation tax receipts, particularly from large multinationals, which is really helping us. But we do have to be careful not to make, say, permanent expenditure plans on the back of those receipts. Those receipts may not last. And if we say we're going to increase welfare by €50 a week, or increase the pay of public servants by 20% because we're getting these receipts in, the receipts might stop. You still have the bill every year, and then you end up into a cycle of cuts again. So we're gonna put some of it away, put some of it into capital spend, houses, things that are kind of one-off in nature. So you do just need to be careful, because we've got a really bonanza of corporation tax receipts coming in that won't last forever. So like, when it comes to housing, we're in a strange place in that money is not really the constraint that it was. The housing department won't spend all their money this year. Okay. It's delivery, it's capacity, it's sites, it's planning, it's delays, it's objections. So that's why we just have to try and cut through a lot of that red tape insofar as we can, and get homes built. Because
there might be a perception out there that, like, the government is, apathetic to the cause of people, to the plight of people, but it's not. That the money is there, but there's more obstacles than just the money and the will.
Especially now. That wasn't always the case now. I'm not going to suggest it was. Money, in normal times, money is the limiting factor. But at this time, it's not really when it comes to housing. So it just means the state has to step in and do more directly, because the private sector are dealing with materials inflation, labour shortages. They're really struggling too. There are a lot of sites in Cork and all over Ireland that have planning permission, but they haven't started because they're not viable at the moment. And so we have to step in a lot of those cases now, and just partner with the developer or the owner, and the state become more directly involved and build out those schemes, because we can afford to do so at the moment.
You mentioned inflation there. Will you explain to me what inflation is in a nutshell? Because I can't get my head around inflation. Economics at the best of times anyway, Michael, to be honest. But if you can explain to me what inflation is, and how prices rise and like maybe the different socio-economic factors involved, or maybe political factors, or what does it take to cause inflation?
Yeah, like it normally happens when, let's say, an economy is overheating and there's just more demand than there is supply, and so if you've a lot of people trying to buy something and there's only, say, a few people bidding on a house and there's only one house, then the price is going to be higher. So it's normally just a mismatch of, more demand than there is supply. Of course, like coming out of COVID, so the economies around the world really stopped during COVID-19. And the way production systems have gone in recent decades, they don't really tend to stockpile a huge amount of stock. It's all this kind of just-in-time production. They make product as and when they're needed. And so economies stopped. And then when the restrictions started to ease all over the world, massive demand for goods and services.
Like the chip shortage.
And the systems just couldn't respond quickly enough. And that just drove up prices. And materials were in short supply. And sure, some timber and steel products, went up 60, 80, 100% in some cases. So there was inflation before the war, but then the war just took it to a whole new level, especially with energy and the fear that Russian gas, and Europe has been really dependent on Russian gas coming in, that might be cut off, that might be in short supply, and people were just paying a premium for it. And so it's just added a whole new level to inflation. Like it's now about 10% inflation at the moment, which is the highest in about 40 years in Ireland. And then the main way that the system tries to deal with inflation is by increasing interest rates. So basically the central banks are trying to dampen down economic activity. They're trying to press down demand, which will hurt an economy. But the view is that if you don't get inflation under control, it becomes stubborn, it just becomes sticky, and it stays there forever. And then if governments keep spending more money to resolve it, that's putting more money into the system, and that's adding fuel, and inflation goes even higher. So unfortunately, the medicine for inflation is interest rates going up, and that hurts. It hurts people with mortgages, with business loans, and so on. But the overall, it wouldn't be the view of everyone, but the mainstream view of economists is that you just have to raise interest rates to get inflation down, get it back under control. The European Central Bank, and we're part of that, they want to get it down to 2%, and it's currently 10% across Europe. So they've got a long way to go, and unfortunately we're going to see interest rates go up higher, and that will reduce demand and that will dampen activity. But in an Irish context, we're coming from a really high base. The economy has been flying really well in the main. But you're seeing the effects of it come through now in the tech sector. Advertising on tech platforms has diminished. Consumer demand, in a lot of places in the world has shrunk, and so that is the beginning of the efforts to get inflation under control, dampen down economic activity, and then hopefully get it to a more steady state, and get demand and supply matching each other a little bit more evenly.
So inflation's gone up. People stop buying, they stop spending because of the cost of stuff. So if people aren't spending money, then that will affect the economy as well, won't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
But does that mean the economy will go into recession, or what does it mean?
It could, but we don't think it will in Ireland. Okay. Now, like recession is a very bad word, but it can mean an awful lot of different things. The kind of technical phrase is that the economy shrinks for, say, 2 quarters in a row. But the most important thing is that you keep people at work, because if businesses go to the wall and thousands of people lose their job, it just spirals then, because they're on social welfare. The longer they're out of work, the harder it is to get back into work. So if we can keep employment levels high in Ireland, and we're coming from a good base because there are shortages of people across a whole range of sectors, so I think our economy can absorb a slowdown in different sectors, because there is demand elsewhere. And you think of the services sector, pubs, restaurants, and so on, shops, they're all looking for people. So there is.
So even the construction industry, Michael, because we need so many houses at the moment, I think that industry is going to be safe, okay? Whatever about the commercial side of it, that's different. But I'm looking at the demand for housing. So say, for example, we have 200,000 construction workers living in this, working in this country. They are all needed for the level of housing we need at the moment. And I know the government is behind the housing crisis, and they will pump whatever money into getting enough houses sorted. So if you have 200,000 employees in the construction, you've indirect then as well, which you have builders, providers, shops, accountants. These are all. So I think as long as we do keep construction going at a level and keep it tipping away in this country, we will be fine. That's my understanding of it, because I'm in that industry, and you know, from being in college and listening to lecturers talking about the different hot and cold areas around recession, particularly around construction, I got a belief that if construction keeps going, we can keep everything else going as well outside of it.
It might mean that you're kind of diverting some activity from commercial construction, offices and so on, more towards residential. That might happen because you've only so many builders in the country. But as long as the broad economy remains pretty healthy, and so that comprises lots of different elements. Foreign direct investment is huge in Ireland, and it continues to be good. The idea had a record year last year, and despite the global environment, they're doing really well this year. So that's paying a lot of mortgages and a lot of rents, and is sustaining a lot of families, and that provides business then for people in construction, and it allows people to borrow, you know, to do an extension or to buy a home and so on. So that's one part of it. And then you have the indigenous economy, and that is driven in large part by, you know, the amount of money that people have, their disposable income, and by however successful those businesses are doing to sell goods around the world in exporting. So they will be impacted by the slowdown globally. A lot of our trading partners are going to go into recession. The UK is in recession. They're our biggest trading partner at country level. So I'm not saying it won't have an impact. It will. We think growth will slow to quite a low level in Ireland. You know, very, very modest growth. If you're asking me, could it just tip to the negative? Of course it could. It's possible. But I don't think, if that does happen, and we don't think it does, but if it does happen, we don't think it'll feel like the recession of the 1980s or the COVID period. We don't see that happening, and nobody is predicting that for Ireland, thankfully.
Could I ask you about your office that you hold at the moment, the Minister for Public Expenditure? What kind of a team have you got around you? And you know, the budget is obviously the big thing annually that you do. Like, how do you actually budget billions? Like, have you got a team of accountants? What's the practicalities of the office?
Yeah, so it's a big department, and like up to about 11 years ago, you just had the Department of Finance, and then it was split into the two, finance and spending, basically. And so our core function is to manage public expenditure. It's about 90 billion a year that the Dáil votes through in money, and you have big elements of that. You know, social welfare is a big element, health is a big element, paying public servants is a big element as well. So the most challenging part of the year is the budget process and negotiating, and it is old school negotiations, it is with ministers, and so that would have fallen to me. So the process starts in the summer. The budget is normally October. This year it was late September. We brought it forward because of the cost of living. The officials would be kind of hammering out negotiations for weeks and weeks, but then eventually it gets to the ministers' meeting. And sometimes you'd agree the budget in one meeting, and other times you wouldn't, and it could go down to the wire. But I suppose what helps me is that the government has agreed what the overall strategy is. So it might be, for argument's sake, that spending is going to grow by 6%. So if someone comes into me and says they want 20%, I say, well, look, how can I give you 20% when I have to stick to 6% overall? And if I give you 20, it means that minister over there and the Minister of Housing and Health, they get nothing, and that's not going to work. So you need to come back with a more realistic proposal. So it's fairly fairly kind of ground hurling, it sounds like proper negotiation.
For example, if Simon Harris, we use fictional, say Timmy's the Minister for Justice and I'm the Minister for Health, right? And I obviously try and look after my sector, and he's trying to look after his sector. Do I Michael, do you want to go for a coffee there, and you know, or how does it work? Like, is it, do they pick up the phone? Or
they do try and get you away from the officials. They do, and look, you have to get on well with colleagues and understand where they're coming from. They all want to get the best for their sector, and they want to be seen to have delivered, the biggest investment ever in education or healthcare or whatever. But because like my department is pretty much at the centre of government, and we have contact with all of them, we have to make sure that there's an overall message to the budget. So this budget gone was about cost of living. So my priority was payments for people and a fund to help businesses with energy.
I think it went down well in most realms.
I think generally it did, but it just means then that you can't do everything. If people come in and they want a massive increase in investment in other areas, then as far as I was concerned, and we had a government agreement around this, that the priority this time was to help people get through the winter with their bills, whether it be the energy credits or all the special payments in recent weeks. And so you just have to make sure that there is an overall kind of cohesion and a message to the budget, that it's not just a bit here and a bit there. And
is it difficult? Is it difficult doing it then, where it's not a full Fianna Fáil government, and some of them is Fine Gael, and is there different in values or different in ethos, or does it make it harder?
It does, yeah. But you have a programme for government.
So that's agreed already.
We've agreed at the start, but that doesn't always kind of help you too much when it comes down to individual budgetary decisions, but it is a reference point. But yeah, like parties will be looking at it from their own perspective, and they'll all be doing their own market around the budget, that they delivered this and they delivered that. So you could get into endless rows and arguments, but miss the bigger picture. The people out there generally don't care too much about what party got the most in the budget. They just want to know, what did the budget do for them, and did it make any effort to address the main issues the country is facing. So you just have to keep that in your mind. But yeah, you need the patience of a saint, and you just need to keep talking. And that's what I always say. If a meeting ends badly, I just say, look, we'll stick at it, we'll keep talking, and we'll find a way through it. There will be a budget. There has to be a budget, and I'll be standing up to deliver my part of a budget no matter what.
I work with a lot of older people, and when the budget was announced, the energy credits especially took a lot of pressure off them. So that's why when I seen the budget and I seen that, I felt it was a good thing. But there's probably a lot of other people that maybe that didn't affect them so much, and they thought it was a bad budget. But you're in a place where you can't kind of please everyone. You're just trying to do with your integrity as best as you can, with the resources given to you and the circumstances that you're met with. And like me and Timmy often said as well, like, we've met yourself, we met Miss McEntee last week, we've met the Taoiseach. We find politicians to be generally nice people, trying to do as best as they can. And if you just give them a half a chance, or try to have a bit of an understanding as to like the enormity of the task ahead of you. Do you know what I mean? A budget of 90 billion, a population of 5 million. And you're not going to please everybody, but you're doing as best as you can.
You have to prioritise. You can't do everything. And I always say to my colleagues, like, everything can't be the priority. Something has to be the priority, which means something else isn't. And you just have to respond to the circumstances you face as well. And in this budget, like, it just had to be about the cost of living. Because you would be very worried about people, and
particularly the older people, when they're at home and they're afraid to turn on their fires, or the coal doubled in price this year. But just regarding fuel and stuff like that, you might be able to answer this. I don't know if you can or not. But in relation to the energy crisis that we're having, not just here in Ireland, but all over Europe, everywhere, has Ireland looked at that as in a way that we need to structure some form of way that we're providing our own energy to our own country? Like, we have the coast of Ireland, we have wave technology, we have turbines, we have so much that we could use to source, that we don't need energy from anywhere else. And I know eventually we're probably going to it'll all be electric, we'll get rid of gas and oil down the line. How far away are we from having a source of energy ourselves in this country?
I think in the 2030s we will be self-sufficient, we will be energy independent. Like, the Wind Energy Ireland came out there recently and said in the month of October 47% of electricity in Ireland was generated from renewables. And the aim is for that to be 80% by the 2030s, 80% from renewables. Now, it wouldn't be 47% every month on average across the year. It's been about a third of our electricity. So that's really good. We're actually leaders in onshore wind. And the next big thing in Ireland, including here in Cork, would be offshore wind, floating offshore, and they'll be so far out you won't see them. And look, there will be challenges and objections and so on, but that's the big thing for us. You will always need backup fuel. You will always need gas. It'll be a transition and it'll be a backup, and we are going to have to extend the life of some of the traditional electricity generation stations just to make sure we get through the period. But like, Ireland will be a net exporter of energy in time.
And even
no doubt about that.
Like if we're using 47% of our energy from sustainable technologies, like, why have energy costs gone up so much still drastically? Is it because of other bodies that are supplying energy? Are they just trying to screw people basically, or what?
So the remainder of our energy then is generally gas generated. So that has come in from a connection with the UK via Scotland. So the price has gone up a lot. And then the way that energy has been priced, it's been basically based on the gas price. So even the non-gas energy has been based on gas.
So you can understand where I'm coming from. So
absolutely, absolutely.
Because if we have 47%, everything has gone up across the board. So
it's just the wholesale markets. No, the good news is that they have come back a lot, and has fallen an awful lot from the peak, but that has yet to make its way through.
Do you think they'll ever go back to where they were, Michael? Do you think the prices will ever go back to the way they were before
Probably
the war?
not in the short to medium term. They tend never to fully go back to.
They always
So you'd have to say that for the foreseeable future they're going to be higher.
It's the same in construction.
Construction never goes fully back.
We were told there was going to be a 30% hike in insulation costs because of the cost of transport to Ireland, because of the costs of powering the plant where they make the insulation. So it was a 30% hike. Then all of a sudden it was another hike here for this. No, people aren't building their houses. People who've gotten loans off banks, they can't afford to pay for the cost of materials. So the money that they got for the mortgage is sitting in the bank. The cost of materials just can keep rising. Is there anything there for people that have gotten mortgages, and they actually can't afford to build their houses because of the increases in material costs? Is there something government has done for any of these people?
So there's nothing specific to that circumstance. Like, we've extended the Help to Buy scheme again out to 2024. That's where people can get up to €30,000.
We got that in February.
Home.
We bought a house in February, and actually you talking about gas there. We've no gas, which is great. We've the air to water, we've the heat pump, which we've only half the bill, which is a big change for us.
And was that a house in a housing estate?
Out in the country, out past the Coachford direction,
new build.
So we were able to get, I won't say how much, but we were able to get a significant sum back from revenue and the Help to Buy. It was income tax that we paid 4 years previous to that.
That's right,
and it was very quickly done as well.
It's a good scheme. Because the other one that is quite new is a shared equity scheme, where that if you do have a gap between how much you have and can borrow and the price of the house, the state can partner with you now and take a share. That you don't have to pay back in the short term. So it might help people to get over that hump. And there's a fair bit of interest in that scheme at the moment.
And there was a reduction from 20 to 10% for second time buyers going into 2023. So if you're a second time buyer, previously you had to have a deposit of 20% for the new home, but it's gone back to 10 now.
That's right, same as first time buyers now.
Yeah.
So they're good initiatives, really, to help people get back on their feet if they're able. Because every time I walk into a builder's providers nowadays, they seem to be busy in the yard because the materials that are going out onto sites. But then you don't see many one-off builders that are building one-off houses in there anymore, buying materials. That not too much because of the people pulling the plugs and bills.
Timmy's in construction. I'm in the third sector, youth and community work, So let's say in private industry, if inflation, costs of materials stuff go up, then you can put up your price and increase wages.
Yeah.
But in the third sector, Section 39 workers like myself and a lot of people I know, the funding is rigid, So let's say if Timmy's the CEO of a charity and he pays his workers 34 grand a year for the last 10 years, that stays the same regardless. And I don't know, is this your area? But do you think that there'll ever be a case where that will be reviewed to match kind of current economic situation, or do you think that that's not a priority at the moment? Though?
It is a real issue. Yeah, there's no doubt. You see,
it's very hard for those Section 39 to keep staff at the moment.
Yeah. No, I've met a number of them, and they've explained even the consequences of the public pay deal, which was a good deal and was endorsed by all the unions. They would make the case then that it makes their job more difficult to attract and to retain people. See, they're not strictly speaking public service employees.
That's
so they're employed by
they'd be funded
charity or community body, but they're grant aided by the government. And it's like, if you were drawing up a system now from scratch, you wouldn't do it that way, because it built up over decades. Some of them would have had a religious ethos originally and became charities and would be funded by the state. So there are some cases now before the Workplace Relations Commission, and that's probably the best way in the short term to deal with it. But I do think we do have to have a look at that wider community and voluntary sector. Like, they don't all want to be public servants. I've met some of these bodies, and they don't want to become what's called Section 38, is where they are essentially public service. They want to remain Section 39 but have the pay issue dealt with, because they want autonomy.
Yeah, they do. They want the autonomy, but they also want the pay scale, the pension, or the security, even the job security. Like every year you put out the tender, and a lot of the time, a lot of the work that Section 39 organisations do is building relationships with people, and that can take a lot of time and very hard to quantify. And then that service could go to tender, which is basically a lot of real people's relationships goes out to tender. But it's just an insecure and precarious industry to be in. And if Cork City Council or the HSE or some other one then starts recruiting, then they just leave the Section 39 organisation. And it's very, but we need, and it became a big, I suppose the light was shone on those key workers, community workers, youth workers to start the COVID, wasn't it? It was just realised how important that those workers actually are,
Yeah, it's a big issue, particularly in health and disability service providers. They're not state run, but they provide a service for the state, and it's just built up over a long time. But you can't just bring them all into the public service. You'd be adding tens of thousands of people overnight to public service pay and pensions. It wouldn't. So I do think that there probably is some duplication as well. There's definitely opportunity there to make it more efficient. Like, if you take all the bodies in say the disability sector, like central procurement would help to save a lot of the money. Even some shared services would help to save them a lot of money. So I think there is a deeper dive needed. But in the short term, there is an issue around pay and making sure that they can continue to provide the service and recruit people. So we are engaging with them. It's not me directly. Well, it's me and other ministers who have the line relationship with those sectors. But I am going to work with them to see what we can do.
Okay. What about, we know Micheal is going to leave the office soon, and Leo is going to take his place. Will there be a cabinet reshuffle? I know Heather Humphreys is going into justice. Do you think that you'll stay in your position? Would you like to stay where you are?
So there will be changes, and so my department will go to Fine Gael, and the Department of Finance will go to Fianna Fáil. It's up to the current Taoiseach to decide who gets it. But look, obviously, I'd love that opportunity. But there will be a number of changes at cabinet level, but I just hope it goes smoothly. Like, it'll be the first time that it was ever done. The rotation of a Taoiseach within the lifetime of a government. So it is historic. But relations are good, and I think it is stable, and I do think that all will go well on the 17th of December.
Would that not be such a waste of time and public money if they had to bring somebody else in to do something like your job at the moment? You're in there, you're sitting in there, you're doing a good job, like, in most people's eyes.
What's the point
of bringing somebody else in and having them to get familiar with the position again? And
Well, I suppose you need to maintain overall balance within the government, and so if the office of Taoiseach is going from Fianna Fáil to Fine Gael, then you do have to look at the mix of the other departments and make sure that overall the government is balanced. And so it would have been agreed when all of this was being negotiated that when the Department of Taoiseach goes to Fine Gael, that the Department of Finance would go to Fianna Fáil, because I look, in many respects it is then beyond kind of Taoiseach and Taoiseach and the leader of the Green Party. It's probably the next most important portfolio, because it has overall responsibility for the economy and overall responsibility for the public finances. So the job that I have is so the Minister for Finance would set the overall expenditure limit. Now, Pascal and I have got on really well, and we would always agree what that figure should be, and then I manage it within that. But finance does have overall responsibility for the nation's finances and overall economic responsibility. And I do think, and this was agreed at the beginning, that if you had the Taoiseach and the Minister for Finance in the one party, it wouldn't be balanced overall. Then the balance in government would be upset. So that's probably the reason on that front. But in terms of other departments and ministers, I don't know to what extent there will be changes. I think the three Green ministers probably stay where they are. So it'll be probably limited enough overall.
Hopefully,
a few changes, I would think. Yeah.
Bring it back to yourself, Michael. You have a Norrie connection, haven't you?
I do, yeah.
Your wife,
married to a Norrie, yeah.
Dublin Hill.
Sarah, yeah, from Dublin Hill.
How did you meet Sarah?
Met in work, KPMG.
Oh, very good.
Nice one.
Fell in love across an audit file is what I say. How romantic.
Working up the courage to go over and say hello.
That's it, yeah. But she went to school in St. Aidan's. So she went
that's where my nephew is at the moment.
And is it? Yeah.
My nephew is in St. Aidan's at the moment.
Yeah.
ETB.
She speaks very highly of it. And and look, similar backgrounds, working class background. And again, no, she would have been the first in her family to go on to, kind of professional working environment and that. So and she has her own career independently of mine, which is great for her to have that independence. And because the reality is politics is very insecure as well. So you could be gone at the next election. That's the reality of it.
I know. And how many kids have you got?
7.
7 kids.
Yeah.
7.
I used to say so far, but I've stopped saying so far. The shop is closed.
Where do you get the time to what you're doing in government and her role of work?
Oh, we've great family support. We're very lucky. Sarah's mum is in and out of our house every day, and is an incredible support, and
unbelievable.
Family chip in and help out in every way that they can, and it's very, very busy. Very, very busy. But I'm away a few days a week then, generally kind of Monday evening to some stage Thursday. Hopefully I'll get home. And then weekends are busy with activities and matches.
There's soccer girls, aren't there?
We've 5 lads, we've 2 girls.
Five boys and
so
2
they're
girls.
all active, to be fair now. GA and
But
soccer.
had you got a child playing at a good level though? With Cork.
Ruth won a national cup with Cargaline under 12, and she's with Cork now under 13 and so on. And Tom is going to Cork City in December.
What age?
Under 14.
Brilliant.
So the National League. But look, I always have to be fair with all of them. They all have their own abilities, and I have to kind of be fair what matches I go to. Make sure I'm at them all insofar as I can. But that's how I unwind. I love sport anyway. Really love sport. I sat down and watched Spain and Germany there last night. First time I actually got to watch a whole match.
Wasn't it a great quality match?
Great technical quality.
It was the best game I've seen. The 2 teams were brilliant.
Do you see your man? That small Gavi, is it?
Gavi.
He's going to be some player.
He is.
He's only 19. But Musiala off Bayern Munich from Germany, 10-20 or something. He was brilliant for Germany.
It's just the way they can keep the ball, like the technical ability,
the first touch,
just the speed, and super.
Unbelievable.
Really enjoyed that game, and I hope to see as many of the knockout games as possible now. And I actually watched the the program about Roy and Saipan last night. We played it back with the kids. Of course, I knew the story well, but they were fascinated by it.
That's 20 years ago now.
I know. I'm sure it was news to them.
He's funny out though. I seen a clip there of him the other day. He was giving out about the English team, saying the spirit of them, and they're all laughing and joking. And he turns around and he says, "We'll see if they're all laughing after the tournament's over."
Yeah,
do you know?
Yeah.
And the whole audience, like the whole lot of them inside the audience, started bursting out. Like, he's so serious, like, and then all of a sudden he come up with a witty one, and like,
he's great one-liners.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Rebel without a football, is that what it's called? Yeah, very good, but fascinating for the kids to see it.
As a player, one of the best midfielders I've ever seen. Absolutely. The whole of midfielders and passion. I don't think I've ever come across a player that was ever as passionate about football, about winning, about the team than him.
Absolutely, I'm mad about him.
You're a United fan as well, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. We're rebuilding.
Yeah. There's a bit of optimism, I think, in there.
I like Ten Hag. I like his style, and I think he handled the Ronaldo situation well.
The manager has to be the main man in the
club. He had to assert himself. I think he did, and Ronaldo must have known doing that interview that it was the end. He must have known that. He's gone now, and look, geez, fantastic player. Up for sale. And
we might get the Irish people to buy him through you.
But hopefully maybe some rich Irish American or something might step in. But they're making progress, definitely, and he's got them more solid at the back, which is the foundation.
But he's made the big calls the other managers couldn't, with the Ronaldo, with Harry Maguire's, these fellas that the fans have been crying out for us, to make a call, but for a long time the Egos, the Ronaldos, the Pogbas, they rule the dressing room, but they don't want anymore.
And you don't want them in the dressing room if that's the case.
You have to have strong leadership when you're
But listen, you have to, you can have a great player in amongst 11 as well, but it's all about the team and how the team get on. If the atmosphere within the team dressing room is good, that team will go out there and they'll fight for each other.
Yeah.
But if you have one fella that's there and he's not getting on the team, or two fellas they think they're better than the team, they'll go out there and that team is not going to work hard for that player.
Yeah.
And that will affect the whole team then and the score line. And
that's the thing with kids, is just to get them into that thinking that it is all about the team.
Exactly.
You might have the ball, you might see you could do something, but if you see someone in a better position, you have to release the ball. But we're lucky in Carrigaline with fantastic clubs. Really do. We're very, very lucky.
My nephew scored a couple of goals down there last week.
Yeah.
He plays up front for Rockmount.
Oh yeah.
The game was over at half time. Now it was in the Munster Senior League.
Yeah.
Carrigaline is a great club, but Munster Senior League level, Rockmount are intermediate champions.
In Munster.
But there was murder there last season. The game was nearly abandoned and all between Carrigaline and Rockmount. But listen, it's been great talking to you, Michael. Yeah. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to you both.
Thank you.
And, hope you manage to get a break now in a few weeks at Christmas. And keep up the good work.
I learned a lot today anyway.
Yeah. That's good.
Politics is always James's area for me. It was never something I was ever interested in growing up, but I actually enjoy listening today because it's something we all need to know about, because we're Irish people and citizens of Ireland.
I think the job for us is just to try and relate politics to the ordinary day-to-day lives of people, and just to convince them and explain that it has real meaning. And it does impact on them, you know, and they mightn't think it does. And you'll always have a share of people who despise politicians. And that's fair enough, but in a healthy democratic system, to get as many people out to vote, as you say, it doesn't matter who they vote for ultimately, that's a great thing, and it's really precious, and we should hold on to it.
100%,
and we have problems in Ireland for sure, but we're not a bad country.
No, and I think one of the best things about Ireland is we can have a minister come into our office, or we can bump into the Taoiseach walking through the city. I remember one time I was in town, I was working in the Simon, and I bumped into Michael D when he was canvassing to be re-elected. It's isn't it great though? Nowhere else would that happen, do you know what I mean? Where you could actually bump into the president or bump into the Taoiseach or have a minister come in, because they're so removed, because of security reasons and all. But I think in Ireland, it's important that we keep the offices and the high offices, people can see them, do you know what I mean? And you're not too far removed.
And we have an electoral system that does keep politicians close to the people, because you'll be out in your ear very fast. If you've got any notions, or you're not above your station. We've multi-seat constituencies, other countries. it's one seat per constituency. It could be a very safe Tory area, for example, it's first past the post, and like you get removed, you get very detached from it
and complacent.
But we can't. If we do, you're gone. You just won't last if you're not in touch with people, which I think is good for our country, that we're more connected with the people we represent, and we can bring that experience then to the work we do every day. But
Thanks for your time. Happy Christmas yourself, Sarah, and the 7 kids.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
God bless.
Thanks a million, Bush.